perhaps technically the most difficult of the talks, and so for that reason it's a really brief summary of ideas, but there is a list of questions if people want to sort of pick up stuff later on and get back to me. So getting started again this autumn, the past cannot be replicated into the future. It's taken huge amounts of effort for people to finish off the last term, and what are we going to do for the future? One of the key things is how you assess what's being done, and from my learning, one of my discoveries as an academic is it really matters how you're going to assess something and getting that sorted out very early on in terms of how a module is run. As I mentioned, I came to the academic world quite late in life, and there were 4 surprises for me. First of all, how much you could learn as part of a stretching assessment. Secondly, how important and useful learning outcomes were. One of the big revelations for me was the idea of threshold assessments, criterion-based marking, where each success takes you up to another grade. And I was converted one lunchtime in a talk that another member of staff gave, and I thought this is a great idea. And when I got a chance to try it out, I did. And then finally, I realized that designing academics is a generic skill that you can go on to apply to assessing projects, to helping people develop frameworks for their career, and all kinds of things. Very quickly, if you are just adding up marks, then you will want to have very few students in this category below the pass-fail threshold, and yet you'll spend 40% of your time marking in that area. What you really want to know is just 2 things. There's only 2 categories there. Did the student do almost well enough to pass, or did they fail in an irredeemable way? So you really only need 2 categories there. So what we end up doing is creating some easy marks, and then we have some hard marks, and we hope that when they add up, it'll get most students over the pass-fail threshold. But what we don't know is whether we've got the balance right, and whether some students who scored better and got higher grades in the end have actually scored as many of the hard marks as we were hoping they would do. We don't know whether the grade boundaries are really in the right places. It's just a matter of what they scored. And I think often we're very optimistic. That was one of the revelations to me. We're very optimistic over how reproducibly we can mark both against ourselves and other people. My preference, coming from an industrial background, was to get the final assessment sorted out before term even began. I didn't always manage to do that. But if you can do that, then it does make the earlier phases of your teaching much easier. And you can forget about the assessment and just focus on getting the students both to learn on their own and to do some discussion with you. So what we're really after in the assessment as we mark it is to, first of all, spend very little time, if we can, ensuring what the student has done below the pass-fail. We've got a couple of buckets that we have to sort of fill, and hopefully there'll be no students that fall into either of them. But we do need to know when we're above pass-fail whether they have been confidently and accurately placed between the threshold boundaries. And what we'd really like to do as well is once a student has reached their limit, we want to again avoid over-marking or spending time where they're not going to get any marks. So hopefully, ideally, we spend very little time marking below the pass rail because there's no students there. And once a student has reached their level, we don't want to spend time trying to look for marks that aren't there. This is a generalization, but by and large, at the start, at the pass level, you're just looking to see what students know, that you're testing their knowledge and their ability to do simple things with that knowledge. On the other hand, when you're heading for higher grades, particularly for A grades and A stars and everything else, what you're really looking for is for their ability to synthesize knowledge, to come up with new results, to draw in knowledge that came from outside of the syllabus, and to analyze stuff very perceptively. Our experience was to run a single sequence of online discursive coursework, and then to run a second sequence that was exactly the same, although we did less monitoring of the students in the second term. They had a pass-fail assessment in the first term, and those that got through that had passed the module and went on to sit the exam for higher grades. I would say that Threshold-based marking, it's harder to design. You spend a lot more time up front, but you save huge amounts of time when it comes to the marking. If you make a mistake and you set up a rather poor exam or an exam that the whole class misunderstands, they're much harder to fix and to make corrections for afterwards. So you do have to make sure that they are well tested. I believe that threshold assessment offers a way to really nail down the achievement and to set the thresholds that you really want to live and die by as an academic. And I think it offers a way to unify the whole of your module design around the idea of learning outcomes. Here's a list of questions, and if you're interested, here are my coordinates.